Give the Drummer Some is sponsored by Supernova Drum Company. Bespoke drums made with unique shell combinations using many different species of wood. Supernova Drum Company, truly custom drums. Visit supernovadrums.com and facebook.com/supernovadrumco for more details.
There is an inexorable force in the cosmos where time and space converge. A place beyond man's vision, but not his reach. It is the most mysterious and awesome point in the universe.
Unbearable suspense and sadistic terror grip the senses as these human transplants threaten the safety of a city.
Flying saucers have invaded our planet. Washington, London, Paris, Moscow are key targets. The whole world is under attack. Hold on to your chairs, folks, for here they are.
Give the drummer some.
Take that crazy rhythm.
It's nice to see you back in the old groove again, Daddy.
14 mounted toms, 8 floor toms, 4 splashes, 2 gongs, 10 cowbells, 4 rides, 5 snares, man. A roto-tom rack. And it's all mounted on my infamous quadruple kick drum system.
Hey! You didn't touch my drum set! Hey, knock it off!
Good evening, friend.
You returned? Welcome to Give the Drummer Some, a podcast where we'll be talking to well-known drummers and industry names and asking them all about their other interests away from the drums. We all know them as the masters of keeping time, but what really makes them tick? Joining us today is the master of mirth, the doctor of deception, a human enigma. It's Quince Neal.
Thank you very much.
So what's new in the world of you, Quince?
I watched that Dave Grohl documentary, Sound City.
Very good. What did you think?
Oh, it was very good. Very, very good indeed. I like the way how it spanned across many decades, from like Fleetwood Mac right up to the present day, and kind of like the way Dave Grohl purchased the console and put it into his own studio.
He has a piece of history in his own studio indeed, hey?
It continues the legacy, yes.
Very good. What would be your favourite music documentary then?
Ooh, I'd probably say Funky Monk's Red Hot Chili Peppers.
And I'm sailing!
Bow, 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 bow. That's the one.
No, it's a great documentary as well.
Very good. Yeah,
What's your favourite part of it?
I think probably when Chad's using the junkyard percussion to do Breaking the Girl.
Oh,
they're all sat around playing it. I think it's really good.
When he's using the bins.
Yeah, and big pipes and wheel hubs and everything like that.
And Flea's looking all very... Well, he's looking very concentrated on what he's doing.
Trying to stay in time, I think. So.
Too right.
What about yours? What's your favourite one?
Mine would be Metallica's Some Kind of Monster, I think.
Okay, what's your favourite part of that?
My favourite part is when Hetfield loses it. And, Lars gets the full brunt of it. Bless his heart. Yeah. No, it's a great documentary. There's so many fantastic music documentaries. There's just plenty to see. But, so check them all out if you're listening to this. If you care, if you like music, which you do, I hope you do if you're listening to this, then, check out these cool documentaries.
Sounds good.
Over time, as the word on this podcast gets out, we'll be asking you to tell us what drummers you want us to have a conversation with and what question you'd like us to ask them. To do that, simply follow us at facebook.com/GTDSpod and on twitter.com/GTDSpod, and hopefully we'll pick out your questions to be answered. You can also check out our main website at gtdspod.com for more information on us and, of course, on this podcast. So, let's properly start. Mr. Announcer, please announce the guest drummer for today.
Today's guest drummer is known as drumming's global ambassador. He is a well-respected clinician, drum teacher, author, and motivational speaker. Having started at the age of 11 and becoming professional by 12, he has studied with the two biggest names in drum teaching, Jim Chapin and Joe Morello. He has taken part in many masterclasses globally and was the first Western drummer to perform clinics in China. He was voted Best Clinician by the readers of Modern Drummer magazine in 2005 and 2006, and by the readers of Drum in 2006.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Dom Famularo.
Dom is endorsed by Mapex Drums, Sabian Cymbals, Evans Drumheads, Vic Firth Sticks, LP Percussion, and Shure Microphones.
Okay, and welcome, Dom, to the podcast. Where in the world are you right now?
Believe it or not, guys, I'm at a place that I rarely see in my life. I call this home.
Oh, right.
I'm actually in my studio, my teaching studio here. It's the, I call it the Wisdom Drum Shed, WIZDOM. It's my studio that I have here, and I've got, I'll just move my screen so you can see I've got my drum sets over here, and
That's cool.
Oh, that's great.
That's
in
amazing.
the corner here, and I've got the workings of my snare drums in the back and all the different books and things that I have here. So I've got a real fun adventure in being in my studio. It's a soundproof room. It's built out of cement.
Great, cool.
So basically what I built was a bunker, for lack of better terms. And it's 8 inches of cement. And I use what's called cinder block, which is kind of hollow in the middle.
Yep, right.
And when the walls were built, the 8-foot high walls, almost 3 meters, it inside the actual hollowness of the cement, I had a company blow in sound insulation.
All right.
Okay.
So inside the cement is sound insulation. Then there's 4 inches of airspace, and then I built an inside wall that was also has 3 inches of sound insulation, and I built this wall so the room inside of a room contains the sound, so I can be in this room. Once you close, I've got 2 doors, one door that opens out, then one door that opens in. So when you close both doors, there's about a good 1.5 foot of airspace in between the doors, and once you're in this room, it is totally sound contained. I can be in here at 3 o'clock in the morning performing and playing and rehearsing whatever I'm doing, and it doesn't affect anybody outside. And But I built it not so much to bother my neighbors as it was that I didn't want to have the disturbance of hearing noise outside while I'm in the studio.
Yep, right. Yep.
So it was more a matter of me wanting to have the private time. So when I'm in here, whether I'm doing a live lesson somewhere around the world using the internet, or whether I'm performing in here or recording, whatever it is, I have that kind of controlled basis.
Right.
So that's my little area here, which is great. Actually, I just gave 3 lessons already before this started. My first student was from Canberra, Australia.
Oh, right.
And we did it on Skype. We had an hour lesson with him, a wonderful young drummer, Shane Spellman, who's just got some great hands and wonderful questions. Then I went to a student, George Edwards, in Japan. He lives about 2 to 3 hours north of Tokyo,
Right.
in a very small little village. Now, if you're 1 hour north of Tokyo, you're in the middle of nowhere. If you're 3 hours north of Tokyo, you're in the corner of nowhere. You got to go to the corner of nowhere and then find the first corner. That's where he lives. So to have the ability of being able to do lessons this clear is absolutely amazing. Then my third lesson was a young girl, Nina Parra, who's from Sao Paulo, Brazil. A wonderful female drummer who is just absolutely excellent at not only playing with 3 different bands, but teaching many students a week. And she takes lessons with me, and we work on all different types of techniques. So from this studio, I'm able to literally reach the world.
Fantastic.
That's amazing.
Well, talking about travelling, you've extensively travelled, but which are your favourite countries to visit?
Well, because it's kind of funny, because I've been traveling globally at a pace for the past probably 30 years. Last year I traveled to, I think, 20 or 21 countries last year. And on one airline, the airline that I fly the most, which is Delta Airlines, I traveled 128,000 miles. Now, I don't know how many times around the world that is or what happens with that, but it's so intense. And what I'm so excited about is when I travel, I'm able to get to a place. Sometimes it's a new country I've never been to. Mostly it's countries that I've already been to. And every place I go to, I adventure a different city. And I must say that every country I go to, I am humbled on how much you can learn about the people, the culture, the history of where they come from, and then, of course, the great music that they offer.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
I was just literally last week in Mexico. Mexico has 32 states, and the state that I was in is a state called Tabasco.
Okay.
Right.
Now, that's where the Tabasco sauce comes from.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the town I was in was called Villahermosa. Wonderful little village. We had a Sabian Day, a big festival, with myself, Dorico Watson, who plays with Victor Wooten, and 6 other Mexican drummers. So there were a lineup of us on stage, about 1,000 people. We get there. It was about 100 degrees with a very high percentage of humidity. We get there. We go out to lunch, and as we have lunch, they said, "Dom, you got to try, a little bit of this sauce." on my little bit of my fajita that I had, I put 1 drop of this sauce. I mean, a drop, guys, like out of a freaking eyedropper that the human eye could barely see the drop. I put the drop on saying, yes, when in Rome, let me try it out. Absolutely. I took a bite of that fajita. And at that moment, I lit up. I got to tell you something. I saw God. God and I had a one-on-one. It was unbelievable, man. We were talking, and I figured a couple things out in my life just from that pepper, having that talk with God. It was incredible. Unbelievable. So that's how I learn about each little area. So I am so amazed at each different city I travel to and each different country I'm able to adventure. It's just wonderful.
Unbelievable.
Cool. Do you have any more travel stories? You must.
Oh gosh, guys, I don't know how much time you have, but you better believe it.
We got plenty of time. It's entirely up to you.
I get to China, and you were talking about Neil. You're into being a chef and stuff. I get to China, and I was the first drummer that had performed in mainland China 20 years ago, and it was so great to go by there and perform and teach and educate and be invited by the Chinese government. I was invited there through Sabian Cymbals, a Canadian company, and we get there, and after 1 week of incredible excitement and just performing and meeting thousands of people, they tell me for our last meal we want to treat you to a very, very wonderful special meal, and it's cooked. We're going to go to a Dai restaurant cooked by the Dai culture. Mm-hmm. The Dai culture is people that live in the southern part of China. They live in the mountains, and they cook all natural from the land. Very special restaurant. We get there. And, of course, the main meal is snake.
Oh, cool.
Now, I don't mean a little snake they bring out and you cut it up and they cook it. I'm talking about a huge snake where a guy walks out holding it under the throat and he's grabbing the bottom part and he walks out with the snake and the snake is alive and unhappy. And he brings this thing on. This guy's got no shirt on and you can see his veins and his muscles just trying as hard as he can to hold the snake. He brings it up next to you, and we're sitting there, and all that's on the table is an empty glass. This whole big round table, 20 people, and 1 empty glass sitting in front of me. Mm-hmm. The guy comes out with the snake. He comes out, and then he lowers the snake and steps on the tail and stretches the snake out with 1 hand. Then from his back, from his pants, he pulls out a knife and then slices the throat of the snake right next to me. Turns the snake upside down and drains the blood into the 1 glass that's in front of me.
No way.
Right down to the last drop. He literally took the snake and went right down to squeeze the last freaking drop into my glass. Now, if you ever want to go on a diet and not have food for several months, go to this restaurant.
Wow.
I can't believe what's going on. And then he stops. Now the snake is just dead. It's limp. It's like a wet noodle. He picks up the head, then takes the knife and slices the skin and pulls back the skin to show you the meat you were about to eat.
My word.
Then he leaves and takes the snake out, and they go back and they cook and they prepare the snake. Now the tradition is to take a sip of the blood and pass it around to purify your body and enjoy this natural food.
Right.
So what's amazing is just what I've eaten along the journey. In Indonesia, we ate dog.
Oh, right.
Dog. Now, they groom dogs like we, farm chickens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, now, nothing wrong with it. We ate it. I didn't know it was dog until we ate it. It was absolutely delicious.
Nice.
How they prepared it with the sauces and the ceremony of what it was, that's kind of how it was. So we ate dog. Now, I have 3 little dogs that we have at our home that we have, 2 poodles and 1 Yorkshire. And I'll tell you something, when I came home from that trip, I now look at those dogs like an appetizer. I'm telling you, man, I look at my barbecue and go, man, the meat must be sweet on that little poodle.
Dear me. Well, you're certainly giving Neil some ideas. He's cooking dinner tonight, sir.
I'm sure the restaurant might have something to say about that.
I've got 2 cats. I might just only have 1 in the morning.
Cats, very, very good. In Hong Kong, cats, very, very good. Absolutely. Cats, very, very good. And I'll tell you something. I've had cockroaches and bugs and reindeer and iguana and alligator and ostrich and I had kangaroo.
Right.
Kangaroo in Australia. It was delicious. What they do is the only real meat that you can eat on the kangaroo is kind of on its upper back.
Right.
Because the animal is such a strong animal. It's so tough to eat.
Yeah.
So what they do is they serve you, they literally put on the front of you on the table a steaming red hot rock. It's a flat rock that's heated up. They put that down. Then they have the meat and you cook the meat on the rock to whatever degree you want the meat cooked.
Right.
And you eat it. And it's delicious. So each place of experiencing just what I've eaten has been an adventure. And, and of course, each country is very different. We're out of our comfort zone from the country that we grow up in and how we're based on the foods and styles and culture and religion that we're in. And when you begin to adventure, I performed recently in the Ukraine in February of this year, which was my 61st different country.
Wow.
So 61 countries to me is, I'm still new and understanding traveling because with all the travel that I've done, I went to the Ukraine and in Kiev and just again, the food was unique what we ate. And of course the culture was different and the people that we had met were so excited. And I went there and performed and there's actually some footage of me playing if you go to YouTube and check it out, there's some great footage there. There's also an interview. There's a website, I think it's called 3+1. And it's kind of like a website TV kind of a show. And they interviewed me about some of the history of drumming. And as I was talking about a lot of these old players, in the actual interview, they went back and they edited all these old players into the footage while I was speaking about them.
Oh, right. That's cool.
So here's some incredibly talented people that we have this ability of that, where the future's at now in the 21st century, what you all can do with this footage. That as we speak to you here, I'm going to, in the end of August, I reach the age of 60.
Okay.
Wow.
So what's amazing about it is, and just the fact that I'm even saying that word blows me away because it all went by so fast. And what's incredible about it is that this footage of me speaking will hopefully last forever. That with my voice as I'm speaking, as alive as I am now, to have the opportunity of being able to even speak to you guys and share some ideas and stories, that some future generation of drummers will be able to maybe see and hear my voice and feel the passion and the inspiration that traveling has done to continue to inspire me, for me to always act childlike, but never childish.
Sure.
Very good. Yeah. That's where I'm going wrong. Just to get on to another subject, what age did you start drumming? When did you start playing?
It's the times of when I was born in 1953. So by the time I was 11 years old, and I grew up in an Italian American household.
Okay.
And I say Italian American because even though I was born here in America and I'm an American citizen, we maintained our Italian traditions first.
Okay.
And it was a very important thing because in the Italian tradition, there's always music and food on the weekends. It's like celebratory getting the family together. So all of our family and aunts and uncles and cousins would get together at our house, and we get there. And I came from a very musical family, and eventually my 2 older brothers began to play guitar and bass guitar. And then, believe it or not, in February of 1964, when we experienced the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show in America, when that happened and we were able to experience this band that came out and played with the happiness and purity and fun of music and how that affected people's lives, I looked up there and said, man, I want to play music. So my brothers and I, and even my younger sister, put a band together, and we started playing Beatles songs.
Okay, right.
And the Beatles, when they hit America, what was amazing about it is that, remember, this is February of 64. November of 1963, we just had a president assassinated in the eyes of the world.
Sure.
John F. Kennedy.
Yep.
And, in America, to have that happen, in any country to have that happen at that point was devastating. Such a young president and such a hopeful time and such great things that he was doing, within the 1,000 days of his serving as president, this man was assassinated and killed in the front of the world. And when that happened, that massively put a depressed state literally on the world.
Right.
And America was kind of lost, and our allies were lost, and we were all kind of in this confused state of mind. So when that happened in November, and then December, when the holidays came about, everybody was still kind of massively depressed. January, the new year came, and we were still kind of lost with this, Lyndon Johnson taking over his presidency and not knowing what's going on. All of a sudden, in February, we turn on the most popular TV show, the Ed Sullivan Show, and we hear this band comes out, and the band is saying, all my loving, and I want to hold your hand, and all these incredibly simple, eloquent, loving phrases of fun and togetherness. That band literally unified the world from the stage of America.
Right.
So with that, when we saw this, it was like, we got to play music. And at that time, 1965, here I am now, I'm 12 years old, and there were many places to play music. There were many clubs, there were many parties. Everybody was having a Sweet 16 party or an anniversary party, and they were hiring live music, and there was so many places to play that, here I am, I was only in junior high school, and I started playing with my older brothers and some other older musicians. We were working 3 or 4 days a week.
Cool. Right.
So we started playing. So the drums kind of found me. I saw the Beatles and was inspired by Ringo. And then in many of the movies that were out many years ago, there were Fred Astaire movies.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Fred Astaire was a very famous dancer who was just a very classy, creative dancer. He was also an excellent drummer.
Okay.
And in many of the movies, Fred Astaire would play drums. So I would watch Fred Astaire play drums in some of these movies and be blown away by that. Ringo's playing with the Beatles. Then on television, we'd see the likes of Buddy Rich.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Once I saw Buddy Rich, I said, oh my gosh, this is so exciting. And then, of course, all these other great drummers that I began to discover. And my passion for drumming was lit, and it has been a strong flame since the age of 12 as a professional when I became a professional. And I've been doing this nonstop for 48 years.
Wow. That's amazing. What was the name of the band?
My first band?
Yeah, what was the name of the band with your brothers?
The first band that we had was a band called the Upbeats.
Right.
The Upbeats. And it was a band that was kind of fun because at the time, the Tijuana Brass, Herb Albert, the Tijuana Brass was at. And they were a 7-piece band with 2 trumpets and a trombone player and a full rhythm section. And my 2 brothers sang. They sang very well and played guitar and bass. And we did for lack of better terms, like a cover band and a tribute band to this band, Herb Albert and the Tijuana Brass. And it was an excellent band with excellent musicians. And here we were totally playing this music and having great, great fun and doing our thing. And just, people were enjoying what we did. And we took it from there and just had a great time.
Did you play many shows?
We played, believe it or not, hundreds of shows. Cool. We played high school shows. We played private parties. Mm-hmm. And then after a while, the 7-piece band, it was hard to get everyone together. So we took just the rhythm section of the band, my 2 brothers, myself, and the keyboard player, and put a smaller band together. And we creatively named ourselves, as we did all the research of trying to find names and we'd see like names like Led Zeppelin and the Beatles. We did all the research. We finally came up with the intensified name of calling ourselves the Famularos.
Well, why not?
Yeah.
That's what we came up with. There it was.
Cool.
My dad was very well known in our community. He was, aside from having his own service station where he repaired cars, he was also the chief of the fire department.
Oh,
all right.
So many times the fire department would bring us on to play many of their parties, and we learned a lot of the songs that they enjoyed and songs of the time. So between playing Beatles songs and contemporary songs of that time, and we ended up working and playing, and then we started learning Sinatra songs, and before you know it, we had a whole repertoire of music that we could play for young and old alike. Cool. And we worked literally every weekend from the age of 12, probably until I left the band when I was, 30.
Right.
Okay.
It was incredible. I mean, they just nonstop playing. It was unbelievable.
Cool. Did your brothers go on to be professional musicians as well?
Well, they were professional in the state of the fact that they played in the band and we got paid, and they were phenomenal musicians, as was my sister.
Yeah.
And what's amazing is I always say, my brothers and my sister are way more talented than I am. Wow. They just have a natural. Music came so easy to them. My brother Vin played clarinet and sax and bass guitar. My brother Peter can play any instrument. He can play piano and trumpet and guitar and you name it. And my sister great at keyboards and singing and they, to me, I had to work hard for my drumming talent.
Right.
And they're the ones that really kind of just had all this blessed gift. And they did not stay in the music industry.
Okay.
All of them eventually moved out of the music industry. And although my sister became a dancer and stayed in the dance part of the industry and what it was, my brothers went on to insurance and banking and did their thing in the legitimate world.
All right.
And I stayed in the illegitimate world. Yes.
Well, we saw that you played for B.B. King. What was that like?
I got a call. I was at the time endorsing Pearl Drums many years ago. And at the time, Pearl Drums was also involved with Gibson guitars.
Right.
And they had contacted me to play a few shows with B.B. King. He was doing some performances, and then he would start out by doing a clinic during the day and a performance at night. So I got a call to do a handful of gigs with B.B. And this was back at a time when B.B. was still a legend, but not as big as he became.
Right.
And even though he was big then, it was different. And we had, I think at one point we had like an 11-piece band. And the charts that we had were just phenomenal. And of course, meeting BB and working with him and rehearsing with him was just a real learning experience. He was, he's a consummate pro and came in and kind of directed to all these, hot New York musicians what he wanted and how he wanted it. And then we performed with him during the actual clinic part of it, and then played some tunes later on for the show part of it. And he just played great. He just was, every note he played was just so deep and so soulful that you couldn't help but play the right parts.
Right.
In other words, because you played, it was so obvious what the music needed that there was never any overplaying. There was no, you didn't play any wrong notes because his direction was so clear. That, to me, is what makes a great leader.
Sure.
When the direction is so clear that you just play the groove and the fills that you play are so obvious of what it was, and it was so enjoyable, and I have really fond memories of those performances.
All right. Yep.
What other famous drummers are you close friends with?
Boy, that might be a pretty long list. I'll tell you. I have been very, I really have been very blessed, guys, with me being involved with many great drummers that I have gotten to not only meet and get to know, but also to perform with at different festivals. I've played hundreds upon hundreds of festivals around the world and hundreds upon hundreds of probably thousands of clinics. And I've shared the stage with probably all of the drummers. It's probably easier if I mentioned who I haven't met yet.
Right.
I mean, I haven't met Phil Collins or Neil Peart.
Right.
That's pretty much it.
Wow.
Other than that, I've had the chance of meeting the likes of, from Steve Gadd to Vinny Colaiuta to Steve Smith, Greg Bissonette, Billy Cobham, Terry Bozzio. I mean, my gosh, Dave Weckl, Thomas Lang, Marco Minimum. I mean, I don't know. Aaron, I mean, there's just so many. I played with Virgil Donati and Thomas Pridgen. We did a tour throughout Australia.
Right.
Together. So, I mean, I've just been so blessed to meet with these great guys and perform with them on stage and become friends with them. They are, I have, all of them have been absolutely great to work with. They are seasoned pros. Just the tour I did last year with Dave Weckl and Thomas Lang. These are two, seasoned professionals who not only are great people, but are very dedicated musicians and are, extremely dedicated drummers that know the instrument so well. When you go to perform with them, I always say I keep on learning levels of humility. Right. That in my little life, I've had the chance of being able to not only get to know these guys, but be on stage with them and play with them and learn from them and share my little 2 cents of what I can give to the world of drumming. So it's pretty amazing and exciting. And actually, I get to meet Neil Peart next month.
Oh, cool.
Rush is playing on Long Island at a theater here on Long Island, and several of my friends who know Neil, kept on saying to Neil, you got to meet Dom. You haven't met Dom yet. He's a great guy. He's a dear friend of mine, or he was one of my teachers, and while he's there. So, my friends had found out that I was going to be home that day. They connected with Neil, and then Neil said, okay, man, let's get together. I'll have some tickets and some backstage passes, and so in next month I'll be able to go and meet Neil and touch base with him and just open up that level of relationships. Beautiful.
Oh, that's awesome. Have you got any fun stories with these drummers?
Guys, I'm not sure how much time we have here, but
we're fine for time.
As much time as you have.
Let's get someone like let's Steve Gadd, for example. Steve Gadd, I got to meet back in the mid '70s. And I got to meet Steve, and he was playing, of course, living here in New York and playing at several clubs. And I went by there and met him, and we just kind of hit it off and just stayed in touch. And Steve is just one of the nicest guys in the world.
Right.
One of the nice. I mean, he's such a humble, sincere, down-to-earth guy. And at the time, many years ago, he was a good friend of mine is Liberty DeVito. DeVito played with Billy Joel for 30 years. Mm-hmm. And Liberty is another phenomenal, pop rock, brilliant, innovative drummer to come up with grooves and playing that has just been timeless. And Billy Joel was rehearsing one of his tours at the county that I live in is Suffolk County. Again, another England reference.
Yeah. Sure.
And and the county is Suffolk County, and the Suffolk County Police Department have a training center. So Billy Joel organized in their auditorium, it was just a big kind of a gymnasium room, to set up a stage and rehearse for his tour at the Police Academy auditorium. Well, there's no safer place to want to practice than there. So I used to go and visit Liberty there and go by there, and it was just so great. And then they did their tour. And then, several years later, Steve Gadd was going on tour with Paul Simon, and they were doing the Rhythm of the Saints tour. And it had 4 percussionists on the top tier with Steve in the center. Then the next tier was Michael Brecker and just these phenomenal Richard T. These phenomenal great musicians. And then the lower level was Paul Simon with these African guitar players. It was just a phenomenal band. So I was talking to Steve one day, and Paul Simon also lives on Long Island.
Right.
So Steve Gadd had mentioned, he goes, boy, Dom, he said, Paul's looking for a place to rehearse. On Long Island somewhere. So when he said that, I said, boy, you should have Paul contact Billy Joel, because if Paul lives in Suffolk County, he's not that far from the police academy, and I would just visit at Liberty there rehearsing, if he can get that place, that'd be great. So Steve hangs up with me, calls up Paul calls up Billy gives him the number. Gadd calls me and says, listen, we're going to be rehearsing at the police academy in Suffolk. I'll give you the dates. Why don't you come by and hear the rehearsal?
Wow.
I said, great. So, how crazy this world is. So Steve's on Long Island, and I get in my car and I drive from my house. And I drive the 45 minutes to go there, and I have a pass to get in, and I walk in, and there's Steve, and they're on stage rehearsing, and I'm sitting there, and the monitor mixing board had I think it was over 60 tracks of just the monitor mix of what at the rehearsal. It was incredible. So and because all the percussion stuff to Mike and the drums and everything, it's just incredible. So and the vocal mics and the guitar and sax so I walk in and they're working on this one part. So and as I walk in, there's a little coffee machine. So I walk over and I get a cup of coffee and I'm stirring my coffee and I'm just kind of standing out of the way, so I can just kind of hear this rehearsal. And Paul says to the bass player, "You count it off." So the bass player says, "Okay." So there's no count off. All of a sudden, the bass player starts to play, and as the bass player is playing, I don't know what time signature it is, and I don't even know where the hell one is. Now I'm stirring my coffee, and I'm listening, and I'm trying to find out. The bass player's playing. It was like boing ba, do da do de do. All the space and these notes, and I'm listening, and I'm trying to find out where the pulse would be, and I can't find it. Now I'm saying to myself, and I'm stirring the coffee, going, "My God, this band's going to come in. I don't know where I would come in. I don't even know where one is." So I'm listening. All of a sudden, the percussionist kind of trickles in, and they're kind of playing, but again, nothing, So I'm thinking maybe it's out of time, but it's not out of time because everyone's coming in a certain place. So they kind of know where they're coming in. Sure. So I'm saying, boy, as soon as Gad comes in, I'll know where this is because he's going to lay it down, right?
Yeah.
All of a sudden, Gad comes in and he hits a flam on the small tom, flat. Go. He's not helping. So now I'm hearing the whole band is in, and they're playing this, it might have been like an African mixed Brazilian rhythm all going on. And I'm stirring my coffee and I'm saying to myself, if I was in this band right now, I would be dead. All of a sudden they play and they're playing and this thing is building and I am just in awe of what's happening. Now I'm saying to myself, my God, I'm playing drums all these years. I've been involved with music. I've played some intense situations. And this was so unique and so different. It's going on. All of a sudden, this very famous female interviewer comes in from a show called Entertainment Tonight.
Right.
She walks in, and as soon as she walks in, Paul sees her and goes, "Okay, guys, stop. I'm going to break and do an interview. You guys take 15." So the band then stops. So now Gad sees me. He walks over to me, gives me a big hug, walks over to the coffee machine, and we're standing by that. He's making himself a coffee. And I said, "Steve, I got to tell you something. I've been playing drums a long time. I just listened to that piece. I don't know where the heck one was." I said, I was starting to panic that I didn't know where one was. And then finally all you guys came in, and I still didn't know where one was. So Steve's stirring his coffee, and he looks up at me, and he says, "You too?" And I just thought that was so funny and profound and humorous. So I said, "Steve, come on." I said, he goes, "I had no idea what I was doing."
But it still worked.
It totally worked. In other words, the lesson was to trust your instinct.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
At all levels. That even if you don't know where you're going, if you trust your instinct and you are true to your instinct, it will always lead you down a path that you will know what to do and when to do it.
Sure. Cool.
So it was just so unique in the ways, and just so powerful. There was a Buddy Rich. I met Buddy in 1971, and there was a teacher by the name of Al Miller here on Long Island, who was an absolute saint, and he was my mentor and my teacher here on Long Island. And it turns out that he knew Buddy Rich very, very well. He and Buddy Rich were in the Marines together during World War II.
Right.
So the fact that they were both from New York, they both were in the Marines, and they both were drummers, bonded them together incredible. And of course, being in the Marines together, I can only imagine what they experienced together.
Yeah,
sure.
So when they continued on their lives, and of course, whenever Buddy would come back to New York to play, he would always call up Al on the phone to get together. And because I was one of Al's top students, Al always called me up, and I would go with Al to a Buddy Rich show. So that's how I met Buddy in 1971 the first time. And Buddy was just an intense individual at many levels. And he's playing a concert. We're in this theater, and the stage was kind of high, and it was during the summer months, and we're playing, and Buddy went through bass players like we go through, underwear. Unbelievable. If he wasn't happy, he just fired you, and the next day there was another replacement there. And this one bass player who had been with the band now for about a year lasted an amazingly long time. And, Buddy loved his playing, and during one of the performances they're playing, and while Buddy's playing, he turns his head towards the bass player and yells, "Too much air." The fear that went in the face of this bass player, the fear that this guy went through was like, and the tempo was a pretty fast tempo. And Buddy turns and just kind of says, "Too much air." And the bass player, not knowing what to do, starts to play bigger notes, like the notes got fatter, like bow, 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 man. And his fingers are playing up this freaking neck of the bass guitar, and Buddy's playing and driving, and he turns to him again and says, "Too much air." The bass player now is playing so fast with his fingers, like he's playing one long note. His fingers are flying. The guy is totally red. He is sweating like there's no tomorrow out of fear of being just thrown off the bandstand during this song. Buddy turns a third time and says, "Don't you hear me? I said too much freaking air." At this point now, the tune's almost over. This guy is in panic. He's playing the song. You can't even see the bass player's hands. There's a blur. A blur. It's like this thing is moving. And I'm going, what the heck is going on? Buddy ends the tune. Crash. He ends the tune. You can see the chest of the bass player. His heart is like, doo-doo, doo-doo, doo-doo. You can see the guy is like physically upset. Buddy jumps off the bandstand, walks up to the microphone and says, "Listen, I'm up here playing, and the vent for the air conditioner is on me. It's too much air. So without the vent for the air conditioning, I'm freezing up here." To witness that and see the look of this bass player, just literally in sheer panic, we laughed so hard backstage. When Buddy came off and we told Buddy what happened, Buddy was laughing so hard, and it was just an incredible experience. But that's just the intensity that he ran his band in.
That's unreal.
Amazing.
Really, absolutely amazing.
Have you got any fun clinic stories? Anything that's sort of gone wrong on stage or anything like that?
Boy, totally. There was when I mentioned China before, I was the first drummer to go there, and back in the 20 plus years ago, there weren't that many bands performing, so they didn't understand how drum sets were even set up. Nevertheless, what a drum clinic was.
Right.
So I arrived in China to perform the first clinic in a city called Guangzhou, which is the old Cantonese area in the southern part of China, and I arrived there from Hong Kong by train. And at the time, Hong Kong was still under British rule.
Right.
So we get into China, and we get in there, and of course these military soldiers meet us and interview me about what exactly I'll be sharing at the clinic. And they wanted to make sure that we had no Western style, propaganda that we did.
Sure.
So we get there, and the guy said, "Listen, Dom, we're going to start about 2:00 for the clinic. Let's go out and have lunch." I said, "Gee, guys, it's 12 o'clock now. I only have a couple of hours. I'd like to go to the venue and check out my setup." They said, "Oh, no, Dom, don't worry about it. The drums are all set up. They're all ready for you." I said, well, gee, guys, I have a specific way that I set up and a certain way that I sit and feel and how I adjust my toms and cymbals. They said, no, the drums are set up exactly ready for you. I said, well, I really still want to go there and just kind of see it just to make sure. He said, no, we're going to go eat first. Oh. So now here I am, not even in the country for 15 freaking minutes, and I'm arguing. Guys, I got to go see the drums. And I don't want to be the egotistical drummer. I just want to be prepared to play the game. I said, boy, guys, sure. I really want to just see the drums. I said, how about we just look at the drums so I can see them, and then we'll go right to lunch. So I finally convinced them to do it, which took like close to an hour. That was 1 o'clock. So we drive to the store where they're going to have this, and it's jam-packed. And there are it's at a theater. There's like a lineup of 2,000 to 3,000 people in line for this thing here. I mean, it was just amazing, the attendance that we were able to achieve here. And we get there, we walk in, and on the stage, set up in a linear line, is a ride cymbal on a stand, the hi-hat next to it, the snare drum next to it, the bass drum next to it, and then the floor tom next to it.
Oh, no. Right.
So I said, guys, I'm going to have to set up the drums. And they said, oh, no, Mr. Dom, drums all set up. Guys, that's not set up to play. I got to, adjust it so I can play it. I said, oh, no. Drums all set up. Here, look, we set it up like catalog.
Right.
Set up a 1960s Ludwig catalog that has a picture of the drums with the cymbal, the hi-hat, the bass drum, the floor tom, the snare drum. It was unbelievable. That was the first basis of what we came down to. So part of the clinic that I gave was how to set up a drum set.
Sure.
That was a part of the clinic, how to set the drum set up, then play it, and it was really a part of the beginning stage of planting the seed of really what now is more common in China, over the past 2 decades of many drummers going there now. But it was untapped territory.
Wow.
Totally untapped territory. And clinics everywhere. I mean, my gosh, clinics, when I think about clinics in going throughout France and doing, 27 clinics in 28 days, and going from city to city and setting up and meeting people and having full attendance for each event, and going throughout Germany and in a van having the drums set up so we can just open the back of the doors and literally just take the cymbals out with the stand set up and bring them in and put them down, and it would take us 10 minutes to set up, and we would hit it, and we'd have crowds of people come in, 1,000 people come in, and to teach and talk and share the ideas of the different great masters that I was able to study with in my lifetime, and share these ideas from city to city and country to country, and do it, and travel throughout Norway and go as far up as Trondheim, and then go to Luleå up way in Sweden, and go down to areas of the southern part of Italy, and hit Oporto in Portugal, and then be off to all these incredible Indonesia and Malaysia and the Philippines and Australia, from coast to coast in Australia. Australia is the landmass size of America. Mm-hmm. America, we have 300 million people. In Australia, they have 30 million people.
Wow. Yeah.
So when you think about just traveling and the roads of hitting it, and all the different clinics they did in the States here and throughout Canada from coast to coast, from literally, the end of Cape Breton, the corner of the world and the east coast of Canada, to as far west as Vancouver Island, to a little city called Nanaimo. And to meet drummers and to talk to them and share the experiences of this global traveling has been an incredible journey of experience to experience. And each clinic is totally different with its own set of challenges.
Cool. Sure.
On that note, did you always want to become a drum teacher and educator?
Great question. The answer was no, not really. I mean, I played drums to play drums and perform, and that's really where my first love is, mm-hmm. and it still is there to perform and play. And what happens in life sometimes is your plan in life sometimes fate has a different plan for you. And as I was playing, drumming kind of came easier for me, and I learned these techniques. When I would be performing with bands around the New York and Long Island area, I would be, totally, approached by drummers that said, "Gee, Dom, I love your playing, and I love the way your hands are moving. How are you doing that?" Mm-hmm. So I began to just kind of share these ideas of the teachers I was studying with, and these different techniques, and the free stroke, and the rebound of the stroke, and the Moeller technique, and the finger technique, and Billy Gladstone, and George Lawrence Stone, and Sanford Moeller, and Al Miller, and Charlie Perry, and Ronnie Benedict, and Jim Chapin, and Joe Morello, and Ted Reed, and Arnie Lang, and Henry Adder, all these guys that I was learning from in this journey this year. And as I'd share this, they wanted more and more of what I was offering. Okay. So then they eventually said, "Dom, I want some lessons from you." So I began to teach out of my parents' home. And as I began to teach, more and more students came in. And before you knew it, I had a full schedule of like 50 students a week. Plus, I was playing in 3 different bands. And then eventually what happened is I had some of the band members that I was playing with in some of my gigs were school teachers. And they say, "Gee, I'm a band director at Roslyn High School. I love the way you play. Can you come by and do a clinic for my percussionists and my whole music program at the high school? I'll pay you some money for it." Okay. So next thing I knew, I'm waking up in the morning and I'm going to a school to do a school clinic. Then in the afternoon, I would teach 4 or 5 students. Then in the evening, I'd go to a gig or a rehearsal. That's been my life now for 48 years. Sure. So the clinic thing kind of evolved by me doing these school clinics. Then as I began to do these school clinics, this one school called the next school and called the next school. And at that time in the 70s and 80s, there was this thriving interest to learn more about what I was doing and drumming, etc. So I was invited to all these different schools. Then as I was in these schools doing these school clinics on a regular basis, like one a day, the president of Tama Drums, Ken Hashino, heard about what I was doing and came to one of my clinics when he was on Long Island. Right. And when he heard me doing this in the school, he said, "Gee, Dom, we'd like you to do this nationally for Tama Drums, to be our education director and start to do this to different music stores nationally." Next thing I know, and I said, "Boy, that sounds great." Next thing I know, I'm on a tour with Simon Phillips, and we're doing 16 cities in 17 days.
Wow.
And I just began to do my same teaching concept that I was doing privately and in my clinics at the schools on stage, at that point nationally. Then from the U.S., that kind of got me into Canada to do some clinics in Canada. Next thing I know, I'm going to Europe and doing my performances in Europe. Next thing I know, from Europe, I'm getting called to Pacific Asia and South America, and here I am still doing it. So it's evolved and still grew, and I still sometimes don't believe my schedule and what it is, that the balance of me being a performer and me being a private teacher and me being a clinician and also an author.
Sure.
I have 10 books. My 10th book came out, and what I'm excited about is the fact that as I travel around the world, I get to see what's needed in the industry.
Okay.
So I write my drum books from what I see that's a hole that needs to be filled. Okay. And from that, I then, co-write these books with students of mine and put the books out. And a book just came out this year called Odd Feelings that I co-wrote with a wonderful young drummer by the name of Massimo Russo, who's a student of mine from Italy who has his own wisdom drum shed in a town called Vibo Valencia in Calabria, Italy.
All right.
And last year I wrote a book with Rob Hirons, who's a wonderful young drummer, who is actually from the UK, but he married a woman from France, a singer, and he's now living in Marseille, France.
Okay, nice.
And I wrote a book called Groove Facility with him, and that book has been out and done very well. And I co-wrote a book with Stephen Chamberlain, a young student of mine from Quebec City, Canada. I co-wrote a book called Drum Set Duets, The Weaker Side, and also he helped out with a book of mine called Pedal Control, which is out. So I got him involved with that. And my book, It's Your Move, which I got involved with Joe Bergamini, another young, wonderful student of mine, who Joe Bergamini is a top player in New Jersey, who was the number one call subway, a sub for all the Broadway shows that are happening in New York. So I think he's playing like 5 Broadway shows now, subbing for them.
Wow.
And he's a top player himself with several bands, and he's also the senior editor for Hudson Publications, and he works on many books, and he actually worked on the last Neil Peart book that has been a number 1 seller. If you pick up the most recent Neil Peart book that was actually written by Joe Bergamini about Neil Peart, and it's just a phenomenal book about the understanding of Neil Peart. So this has been an exciting journey for me to be involved with all this young talent, that I'm able to get these ideas, work on book products with them, and be an author with these books while I'm teaching and doing clinics and playing gigs and having a wonderful family.
Sure.
Cool. You mentioned some of your teachers. What was it like, and what did you take away from studying with people like Jim Chapin, Joe Morello, and Papa Joe Jones?
You know, these guys, I had 2 lessons with Papa Joe Jones, and those were 2 of the most profound experiences of wisdom. As with all these players, what they did was, wisdom is the balance of knowledge and experience.
Okay.
That's what wisdom is. Knowledge alone does not guarantee wisdom. Knowledge is the information. Experience is putting that information into action. So the combination of that knowledge in a movement gives you the experience, and through years of doing that, that's where wisdom falls. And as I always used to say, after my lessons with Papa Joe and Morello and Shelley Mann and Jim Chapin and Al Miller, all of my lessons I would say, you know, gentlemen, if I knew 10% of what you've forgotten in drumming, I'd be a better drummer.
Yeah.
So if I could just learn to listen and absorb a small percentage of what you have, these guys were, I'd have to compare them to being, it would be like being a student of Da Vinci.
Okay. Sure, yeah.
Part of the lesson is just being in their presence of who they are as people. And what I saw with them as people, I saw active, enthusiastic, dedicated, passionate artists that were on a path of learning that showed no end and no decline. That I go to see Jim Chapin in his hospital room 2 days before he dies, and he has a practice pad on his lap, looking at music videos, playing along to it, studying the drummers, and his technique was beautiful.
Wow.
2 days later, he died.
That's amazing.
So the enthusiasm that they continued to show, Morello died at 82 years young 2 years ago. And Joe, you know, and I tell you guys, and as I hope my words reach for future generations, that maybe when I'm long gone, when I speak about Morello and checking out footage on the internet, I don't know, it might not be called the internet in the future. It might not even be called YouTube. But however you can search through the archives of performance footage to research the names of these guys, the Buddy Riches, the Louis Belsons, the Shelley Manns, the Papa Joe Jones, the Philly Joe Jones, the Joe Morellos, the Jim Chapins, the Vic Firths, these great, masterful artists at what they did. And you go by and you just watch what they're doing. What you're going to see is the type of person who they were come out. So when you see them sweating and putting in endless performance energy, every drop of sweat that comes down that hits that drum are thousands of hours of wisdom and experience and knowledge that is being shared with the universe.
Sure.
So to me, just to be in their presence was amazing. Then to be able to sit down with them and have lessons. I mean, Morello was the kind of guy who was just so humble. He had me play a pattern with both of my hands, 16th notes. He said, you know, play me 16th notes at a nice brisk tempo and hold it there. So I'm playing, I'm holding this thing on, and I'm holding it and I'm playing it. And then, you know, after about a minute, I'm starting to tighten up. And this is, you know, one of my, you know, within my first 5 lessons with Morello. And I'm playing and I'm digging and I'm playing, and I'm going on, and I'm starting to get tight, and I stopped. So within a minute and a half to 2 minutes, I stopped. And Joe said, okay. He said, just watching that, I get a chance to see where your hands are. He said, I want you to learn to relax, and I want to get your hands to this level. Then he takes his left hand, and he goes to the pad, and proceeds to double the tempo with only his left hand. and he's holding it there at this ridiculous tempo. And he's playing this tempo, and then he's talking to me, like we're sitting next to the freaking pool, and he's going. Now, what you want to make sure you have a level of relaxation that allows you to never tighten up, and you have to kind of let the stick work and bounce the stick and control the stick in a way that you're giving it a life of its own.
Right.
So when he stopped, the next sound you heard was my jaw hitting the ground. Me leaning over to pick it up and stick it back up, So, just to be in the presence of something that has developed a skill base of that level, and then understood it so well that he could articulate it so well and explain the likings of his teacher back in the 1940s with George Lawrence Stone. George Lawrence Stone, the author of Stick Control, had this incredible understanding of this rebound stroke that was called the free stroke. And with this rebound stroke, when you understood this is the first lesson every drummer should have. Understand how this stick works, the physics, the movement, the ease, the relaxation, the movement of muscular understanding. When you have this kind of understanding, you'll work a lot easier to achieve what you're trying to achieve.
Sure.
So these guys had incredible. And Jim Chapin was of genius blood. Jim Chapin had an incredibly high IQ that I was at his house one day, and after his wife had passed away, I was at his house one day, and the phone had rang, and Jim picked it up, and he turns to me and says, "Oh, Dom, this is Menza." Now, you know who Menza is?
Yeah.
This is the high IQ genius club that these guys get together and just kind of brainstorm.
Sure.
Okay? And Menza is on the phone. Jim turns to me and says, "No, Dom, it's Menza. Let me get them off the phone." He says, "Yeah, what's up?" The guy, and I hear him saying, "No, I don't want to be a part of it." I said, I just want to, play the drum and have the fun I'm having with teaching and doing my thing. Yeah, thanks, but no thanks. And then he hangs up. So I said, Jim, what was that all about?
Yeah.
I said, "Oh, Menza, they call me every year. They call me every year and they ask me to join. And I don't want to join. I don't want to sit and have these conversations. I want to just do what I'm doing and stay in control of my life."
Wow.
He said, he says, so I got a kick out of it. I said, "Well, Jim, how long have they been calling you?" Now, this is now about 2003, 2004. I said, "How long have they been calling you?" He said, "Since I got out of World War II in 1945.
Whoa.
I said, "Wait a second. They call you every year since 1945? He said, "Every year they call me." I said, "Well, Jim, I got to ask you a question. How smart can they be if they don't get the message that every tell them no?" How smart can they be to understand? The answer is no. Wouldn't you think by 1951 that they would take your name off the list?
Yeah, you'd have thought.
I got such a kick out of that.
Oh, that's amazing.
Well, going back to technique, out of all the rudiments, which one would you say is your favourite?
Out of all the rudiments, I would probably say the inverted paradiddle.
Okay. Great.
Because the inverted paradiddle, the way the paradiddle's played, that is really one of the more core rudiments that everybody plays, no matter whether you understand it or know it or not.
Yeah, sure.
But the inverted paradiddle, that pattern, you really have so much you can do with that, and so much that if you just play it on one sound surface, that's one thing. But when you bring that between hi-hat and snare and play that same pattern and allow that pattern to breathe and then add accents and then add, low strokes in that and ghost notes, when that happens, it opens up an endless amount of ideas. That one pattern. Then if you take away your right hand and replace it with your right foot,
sure,
and begin to drop these inner patterns around, and it's really amazing how much you can do with just that one little rudiment in the potential of creativity from just that one, those just 8 notes.
Yep, sure.
Powerful, very, very powerful.
Cool. Well, can you tell us more about Wisdom and your drum shed and your teaching from there?
Absolutely. This studio I designed from being able to have so many great lessons with so many great teachers. To me was really an exciting place because each one, when they taught, they had a different studio. And in their studio, they had a different design of maybe they had one drum set and they got up and they demoed it for you, then they got up and then you sat down, or sometimes there'd be a practice pad next to it. Al Miller had 2 practice pad setups and 2 drum sets in his studio. Mm-hmm. And Shelly Mann had a snare drum for brushes, a practice pad, and a drum set.
Right.
So you work brushes just on only the snare drum away from the kit. And everybody had a little different flair. So I kind of realized that how I wanted to teach was I wanted to have 3 different stations when I taught. Station number 1 was the technique station, where I have a practice pad and I have a double pedal with a double pedal pad setup. Now, I'm not sure if I can show it to you because this is a stationary. Not sure if you can kind of see.
Oh, yep.
The pedal setup. So what you have here is you have this. I've got a double pedal on a practice pad, plus I have a pad here. Right. Directly in front of me is a mirror, so I have a mirror in front of me. Mm-hmm. Directly to my right is another mirror, so when the student sits here, they've got a mirror in their front and to their right. And above this mirror in front of me is a flat screen TV, and I have a video camera that videotapes the student onto the flat screen TV so I can zoom in and they can see their hands. So when they have a challenge with their grip of their hand and they're trying to get this better and they keep on going back to their old habit, and I tell them to freeze and I zoom in on their hand, and then there's a 42-inch hand on the screen. That when they look at it, it's under the microscope. Even Stevie Wonder can see that it's not right. So what happens is it really kind of helps out with the learning process, that we can speed the process up to get everybody to understand that I use this position to hone in on technique. So now with this position, I'm able to have the same setup next to them so I can demo and play, and we go back and forth. So I'm able to record this, and I'm able to either burn onto a DVD, so each student gets a DVD at the end of the lesson, or I can put it onto my computer and put it into Dropbox, or you send it and email it to them. So the lesson that we work on, that we record, that student then owns and has to be able to go back and analyze it. And I believe that speeds up the learning process.
Definitely.
Unlike I wish I had lessons recorded on some kind of format with my great teachers.
Sure.
That'd be
How valuable that would have been. So this is station 1. Station 2 is, if you can see the back here, I've got 3 snare drums. Over here, I have 3 snare drums. Let's see if I can. I've got a classical snare drum here that's tuned very tight and high with classical sticks that would be used in a symphony.
Okay. Right.
Then I have a marching drum here, and this is a Mapex marching drum, and I've got a variety of different marching sticks in front of it, so my students have a choice. And of course, the sound of the marching drum that really has an incredible high-pitched tune with an Evans hybrid Kevlar head on it.
Right.
Very different feel. Whereas the classical drum has a much more delicate sound. So after we learn the techniques in the technique station, it then allows us to apply the techniques here in what I call the reading station. When we're working on books about reading, classical books like the Anthony Cerrone book, Portraits in Rhythm, we're able to work on that reading on the actual drum you'd be playing.
Sure.
And the technique station is only there to learn the techniques. Now we're into application. The marching drum, of course, certain books that I have, like 14 Modern Contest Solos by John Pratt and the Drummer's Rudimental Reference book by John Wooten and Frank Corniola's book that he has. There's so many great, Rudiments in Motion. There's so many great products that are here. So in the technique station, I'll use stick control and work on that, and then work on accents and rebounds. George Lawrence Stone's second book, and there's a new revised version of accents and rebounds that is absolutely phenomenal that I was able to get in line with John Riley, Danny Gottlieb, and Steve Forrester, students of Joe Morello. And we honed in on concepts of that book, and it's the same book, but we added some more direction in the book to clarify what Stone was trying to teach. And then I may use Joe Morello's books, Master Studies 1 and Master Studies 2. I use my book, It's Your Move. So I'll have specific books that I'll use in the technique area. When I come to the reading area, of course, there are a variety of books that we use to work on that. This drum that I have, I'm not sure if you can see this drum here.
Wow. Yep.
This is an actual molar drum that is 17 inches deep by 17 inches wide. That was the design that Moeller did.
Wow.
What I got a kick out of it is that a casket head on it, and this is manufactured by the Cooperman Company, which manufactures all of these drums still to this day. They've been doing it for many, many, many years, probably well over 100 years. The family has been making these drums. And all of the different drum lines that use these kinds of drums around the world, there's a good chance that they are Cooperman drums.
Okay. Wow.
And Jim Chapin, who was the last living student of Moeller, when Jim had passed away, the Cooperman family contacted me and said, Dom, since you are the next in line of Jim Chapin's knowledge and expertise, having him been a student of Moeller, they said, we want you to have a Moeller drum. And they sent me this drum to have here in the studio.
Awesome. Wow.
And this is really a classic of a drum. And this drum, just to hear the sound of this drum, check this out.
Wow. That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing.
Ugly. Just like my ex-wife. It's amazing the depth of that drum. Pretty cool. So that's the second station that I have.
Right.
Now let's if I can track it down to the actual drum kits I have here.
Wow. Oh, great.
Can you see both kits?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so now this area is what I call station number 3. This is for drum kits, drum set playing. This is my love. This is what I play. I have the classical and marching drums there because I feel it's a necessity to understand the workings of how our instrument works. That's kind of the history where we came from. But I have no desire to march in a band or play with a symphony.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
But I do have the respect for those art forms to know that if there's information that I can, for lack of better words, steal from them to make what I love doing better, then I think that's how I incorporated this here.
Sure.
So I've got two Mapex kits in here. And with this here, my students will use this kit on this side. I'll use this kit. And we've got full setups as far as double pedals and 2 ride cymbals, right and left hand, and Chinese cymbals and crash, and 2 hi-hats, so you can play left hand hi-hat and right hand hi-hat. And we have these kits totally here, so we can be in here and I can be demoing with them. And of course the camera, I angle the camera so it shoots them to where they are, so I'm able to record any angle of where they're playing.
Cool, great.
Actually, in a few days, I have a student of mine who works on technologies and equipment, and we're coming in, and I'm adding some high definition cameras that'll be put in certain areas, and I'm going to have what's called a switcher. What a switcher does, it allows me to use any one or any multiple cameras on the actual split screen TV.
Oh, cool. Wow.
So if I want to, I'm going to have two cameras rather, one to the left of the drum set of the student kit so they can see the double pedal and the side view of the top of the drums of their hands and their feet. And I'm putting another microphone up on a boom stand above them so it'll be an overhead shot.
Okay. Wow.
So the students will have a shot on the practice pad area so they can analyze their technique here, on the reading area, and then, of course, on the drum set area. So when they leave here, there's no question as far as what they're learning, what they're practicing, how they played it. And sometimes when a student plays a pattern and they play a groove and they say, Dom, it's not really grooving, what's happening to it? All I have to do is play back what they just played. And I sit with them to look at it. And before I analyze it, part of the wisdom that I've learned is I help them to discover, for them to see what's not working.
Sure. Okay.
9 out of 10 times they say, oh man, I don't look comfortable the way I'm sitting. Or, boy, my posture's terrible. Or look at the way I'm leaning. And when I hear that, of course, I could have told them, listen, your posture's bad, you're leaning. And the way I could, but I know. Part of the journey of teaching is to allow them to discover and uncover their talents.
Sure.
You know, you discover what you didn't know was there, and you're uncovering what's there that you have to unleash.
True.
This is the excitement about learning.
True. Yep.
So this is, in my studio, I'm able to come in here and remove myself from the world, and I've got, my shelving area. You can see I've got an area here where I have all the different drum books. Mm-hmm. And this is the very, very important part of me. Of course, as you can see, I've got stick control here. The new accents and rebounds.
Cool. Right.
Very important. Jim Chapin's Advanced Techniques for the Modern Drummer. We're going to have that. I've got, my book, It's Your Move, which shows the hand techniques of the free stroke and molder, which is the only book that really has done that.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And the first one to come out with it. I've got my book, Pedal Control, which is about, just designing and concepts for the feet and techniques for the feet. I've got, Klaus Hessler, a phenomenal drummer from Germany. Boy, you guys should do an interview with him. Klaus Hessler.
Sounds good to me.
I'll give you his information. Open-handed playing. This guy, when you do the interview with him, will blow you away. As a player, as a speaker, as a man of wisdom. And this book that I was involved with him with, this is Open-Handed Playing, Volume 1 and Volume 2, that are just phenomenal books that'll really kind of open up your minds and your options to think. A young drummer here on Long Island, John Fabicchia, wrote a book called Elements. Book sells very well, and again, opens you up to think differently when playing fills and solos. So I have these books here because it really is an important part of the journey of music. Here's the Groove Facility I talked about before. That book that I wrote with the guy from France, from Rob Hearns.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So I've got all these books here that just opens up an incredible door of opportunity. Here's a book called Sticks and Skins.
Oh, yep. Okay.
This book has over 500 drummers in here. Each drummer wrote their own bio. Well, how crazy is that? I opened it up to my page. Guys, I couldn't have done that if I freaking planned that. Holy mackerel. But in here, what's amazing is that they've got all these different drummers in here and of information, of you name it, man. It's just unbelievable. Bozio, Gadd, Chapin, all these guys that are here. And I was honored when they wrote this and were putting this book together that they asked me to write the foreword.
Oh, great.
So I was humbled by it. But this book here, a phenomenal book. Again, Sticks and Skins. You can go to the website, sticksandskins.org, I think it is, or .com. Unbelievable.
Well,
and just, so all these books here, I feel are powerful books to have. And this book here was a motivational book that I wrote years ago. called The Cycle of Self-Empowerment.
Yeah.
And this book is literally about how to dig deep into yourself to find out what empowers you and how to completely create a momentum that every day you are involved with that level of passion and excitement and love of life. So this bookshelf here allows me to tap into knowledge of the world. So I use books kind of like as a prescription.
Okay.
You know, in other words, I find out what the student wants to achieve, and then I prescribe the books that will allow them to achieve it, what they want to achieve, and a balance of what I feel they need to learn.
Cool.
Right.
That's amazing. How many students do you currently have?
My assistant told me my list is now over 1,000 students that travel to me from over 20 countries.
Wow. That's absolutely amazing.
It really is pretty. I got to tell you something. It really is very humbling because as I said, I'm going to be 60 at the end of August, and to me, when I think about just the potential of reaching people's lives and guiding them and doing this, it really overwhelms me, and humbles me at such a high level. And how I do it is I use an online calendar, and I put in there the days that I'm able to teach. And I put in where I'm traveling. So I might have, 10 or 15 days in that month that I'll be teaching. And my assistant knows how to book the lessons. She sends out an email to my teaching list, all my student list. And then they email back what times they want. And those lessons could be people that drive in here to take a 1-hour lesson, people that maybe do lessons on Skype or FaceTime, whatever program they want to use. And also students that may come in here and travel here to book intensive lessons where they might book a week's worth of lessons. I've had guys come in here that have booked 5 days in a row, 8 hours a day.
Wow.
And we come in here and we have breakfast together. I pick them up at the hotel, which is right in my village here. They come by and we come in here and do 4 hours of work and map out a plan of what we're doing. And then we go out and have lunch and come back and do 4 more hours. Then they'll stay in the studio and practice until they want. And then they'll go to the hotel. And the next morning I pick them up again.
Wow, nice.
We'll do this kind of intensity. The last day, we'll get together and have dinner together also and review it all together. And I have had guys do that on several occasions. And they might book 2 hours, 4 hours, 8 hours, one day. They might book several days in a row. It's incredible the amount of students that I've been able to reach and have in this studio has been just extremely exciting. And the adventure continues.
And how do people contact you for lessons? What would be the best way to get hold of you?
Well, they go to my website, domfamularo.com, and on there is the clarification of my, of how to book the lessons through my assistant, or they can email me directly. My phone number is in there. My office number is there. So they contact me either by calling my office, emailing me, emailing my assistant. And then when they email me, I'll let them know, boy, that's great, and I'll forward it to my assistant. She contacts them and plugs them in, finds out what days, where they can do it, if we're doing it by Skype. And now we'd offer something recently where I'm giving master classes where I'm able to literally from my studio, just the way we're doing it right now, doing a master class where a teacher organizes maybe 10 or 15 of his students in a room with practice pads and sticks. The students pay for the lesson, they pay the teacher, and the teacher pays me, and the teacher makes a percentage off the lesson.
Wow, that's cool.
So the teacher organizes it for their students. I come in, I might do it just once a month. And we'll take a certain topic. It might be finger technique. It might be George Lawrence Stone. It might be Morello, a topic. And we work on that and hone in on it. So the teacher teaches them all month. And then once a month, we come in and we give them this hit. And if we do it as a 2-hour masterclass, I'm able to see them the way I see you guys. They see me. I practice on one of the pads or drums or whatever I'm doing here. We hone in on the lesson. The students, as I said, they pay the teacher. And then with that, we're able to make it an ongoing business where then the teacher PayPals me my part of it and everybody wins.
Yep, sure.
And the teacher actually gets that lesson free because they're making money and they're not paying for it. So the teachers love doing this. Yeah. They get the lesson with their students while they get lesson, and then they're making some money on it. And I try to make this as positive as possible so we can have this creative idea of me being able to use whatever experience and knowledge that I've been able to achieve, and I want to pass this on to the next generation. So I look at it where I've got a 20-year window now. I've got a 20-year window. My dad is going to be 87, and he's in good health. So I've got, up to my 80s and maybe early 80s that I'll be able to really kind of reach the world to continue, hopefully, inspiring and sharing this information. I still consider myself a student of the art form, so I'm still learning. All the different publishers, when they write new books that come out, I always get a copy, a copy so I can see it. And so I'm first on their list to send me a copy of the new books that are out. So I'm able to see all the new stuff that's out and share my new stuff and keep this momentum of the drumming industry alive and well. And the companies that I endorse with are so wonderful in how they support all of this here. I've been with Sabian Cymbals for many, many years, and they've got an incredible education program that allows me to continue to travel around the world, teaching and doing these different clinics. Vic Firth is still at the helm. He'll be 83 years young next month, and he's still at the helm pushing his company, and a brilliant man. And, of course, the educational program with Vic Firth supports me and allows me to continue on to do what I do, teaching and sharing this information. I've been with Evans Drumheads now, and their new Level 360 drumhead is probably the most revolutionary product that I have ever seen coming from a drum company. It's so incredible how they sit on the heads, and the tone, the resonance, and the responsiveness that you get equally around the drum is beyond what I have ever heard in my 48 years of being a professional drummer.
Sure, it's amazing.
And Mapex Drums, who I've been with for several years, makes an incredible product. I have their Saturn kit here, and I have their Velvetone Black Panther drum set here, and they've got a new Saturn kit coming to me soon. The drums are made just absolutely beautiful. They support education. They are incredible to share within the vision that I have globally. And all these companies, LP and what they're doing, and Shure Microphones, these are companies that believe in the future of drumming and literally put their money where their mouth is.
Cool. Right.
When you purchase these products, a percentage of that money goes right back into education. That is a powerful statement.
Sure. Cool.
That these companies make. So it's really exciting.
How do you stay so positive and motivated?
Neil, I think it really comes down to the roots of my family. Mm-hmm. My family, my wonderful wife, I'll be married 20 years come this December, and my 3 beautiful boys that are 14, 16, and 18. And, it's so incredible to have a family that understands what I do and that supports what I do. And that, as they grow, my boys are my gauge of life. Mm-hmm. I don't sense myself aging, but I see them growing up, and they're getting taller than I am. And when I see, them planning out their lives and what they want to do with their lives and how they want to continue and grow and learn, it is simply my responsibility to secure the best life I can for them, mm-hmm. to get them into the colleges that they want and to get them going along the way so they have a wonderful life and a wonderful beginning to what my parents did for me.
That's amazing.
And what my grandparents did for my parents. So I believe the tradition of family and the tradition of having that responsibility is an incredible motivator. And to me, being positive, that's what I wrote in my Cycle of Self-Empowerment book. Being positive is not something which I've been blessed with, that I come from a positive family. And that, let me tell you something, being positive is a choice. It's a choice you make. And I choose that path. Have you ever met somebody who was always negative?
Yep. I'm looking at Neil here.
Right? I mean, somebody who just sees the glass as half full.
Yeah, sure.
And you say, man, the sun is shining. Look at that beautiful day. Oh, yeah, but tomorrow it's going to rain. So, what good is it? We're going to have more fog and more rain. No matter what you say, they're going to knock this thing down relentlessly. And they're that way every day. Mm-hmm. I once had someone say, Dom, you can't be positive every day. Every time I see you, you're positive and you're happy. That's not possible. I said, why is it not possible? If you know someone that's negative every day, why is it possible to be negative every day, but it's not possible to be positive every day?
True. Yeah.
Negative every day is, well, that's the way the world is. That's reality. No, that's not reality. Being negative is a choice that someone's making, and I feel that happens to be a poor choice. They're choosing poorly.
True.
To choose wisely is to say, listen, are there challenges in this world? Absolutely. Are there, I don't know what tomorrow brings. We only own now. Mm-hmm. The next book I'm writing that's following my cycle book is called Owning Now. Owning now. We only own now. We only own this moment. I don't own later. I for sure as hell don't own tomorrow. I can walk out of my studio, have a massive heart attack on my lawn, and that could be it. And this could be the last interview that I could do. If that happens, and that's God's will, so be it. But all I know is in this moment, I've got this opportunity right now to speak to you two guys in this moment, but I get a chance to speak to the future. I'm speaking right now to future generations who I may meet and who I may never meet. Okay. And at some point, to have the chance of being able to sit in my studio and share my enthusiasm and my passion, maybe somebody in 20, 30, 40, or 50 years are going to hear this interview. And they're going to hear this and they're going to say, I'm not exactly sure who that guy Dom was, but man, I felt something from him that has inspired me to aspire. To me, that's the key, to inspire someone to aspire. See, inspiration is when you motivate someone and you inspire me, that's inspiration to motivate someone. Mm-hmm. When that person walks away and continues motivating themselves, that is aspiration. Mm-hmm. That's where I want to get my students to. So in this studio, I fire them up to a point that when they leave, they continue being fired. That's part of one of my mottos, to inspire, to aspire.
Cool. Great.
If I can achieve a small percentage of that in my lifetime, then the purpose of me being on this planet at this point of time in history, to be able to have the wonderful family I have, and to be able to be blessed with the students I have and the opportunities I have, then that's really what my cause was.
Okay, that's great.
And I always say, if we use our lives and we change one life, with you guys doing these podcasts, as this goes on, if one person watches this and walks away and says, wow, that really moved me, then your purposes in life have been fulfilled. That, to me, is truly what it's all about and what the meaning of life is. The meaning of life, to me, is to matter and make a difference.
Too right. Okay. Can you tell us more about your cycle of self-empowerment?
Boy, this book really kind of found me, guys. And like with anything that I do, I always say I'm not smart enough to have these levels of creativity on my own. Outside forces have to hammer me in the head with a 2x4 before I'm able to kind of see it. And in all my travels around the world, I began to hear some of the same questions from people. You know, Dom, how do you tap into a level of passion? How do you find out where that fuel is to keep on going? How do you maintain this level of enthusiasm every day? You know, how do you do it? And I began to tell these stories and these anecdotes and these things, and I came up with these stories that I just kept on repeating country after country, city after city, clinic after clinic. And I came up with a formula that kind of hit me at nighttime. I was sleeping, and in the middle of the night, I kind of woke up and, you know, kind of surprised my wife and saw this idea, this kind of formula in my head. And my wife saw me drawing on a piece of paper, and I'm writing this thing down. And I wrote it out. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm frantically writing this thing that's in my mind. And I put it down, and I went to bed. My wife said, what'd you just do? I said, I don't know. I wrote something that I had to get down. And we went back to bed. Next morning when I got up and I looked at it, and it was clear that I could see it, and I kind of saw what it was. And it was basically this graph that I still to this day use. This is my cycle formula.
Okay, right, yep.
And what it is, it starts out with passion, and that passion kind of brings you up to that dream and the vision. And once you have the clarity of the dream and the vision, we then follow in the cycle of what tools do I need, like words like morals and virtues and ethics and perseverance, and what words do I need to use as tools to give me the goals to have the plan to achieve that dream and that vision. And I feel that once you kind of have this, you follow this formula, it really is a clear picture of having the understanding of being able to achieve whatever it is what you want to achieve. This book, it doesn't matter whether you're a drummer or a plumber. It's about self-motivation and self-empowerment. Empowerment means to give power. I believe the first place to begin is with yourself.
True.
I cannot give you power, gentlemen, until I first have the power. I cannot make you happy until I'm first happy. I cannot love you until I first love myself. So I believe that's kind of where it begins. To empower myself, I found this formula that works for me. I travel around the world sharing it. And if anybody gives me the chance to listen, I share these ideas, and hopefully it can then, from those words that I've spoken, inspire someone to aspire.
Great, cool.
And then from that, I came up with the audio version of the book, where I went to a recording studio and read the entire book. And now it's available on audio. So to have the book out, and now I'm having it prepared for iBooks and Kindle as an ebook. And, you know, it's a way of distributing the book so more people can read it in ways that they want to read it. And here it goes. The adventure continues.
Cool. Well, you're sold. I'm getting a copy.
Yeah.
I hear a lot of drummers, well, some of my students as well, get stage fright. Have you got any advice for someone who gets that?
You know, stage fright is, you know, it's a very common and real feeling.
Sure.
And I get many people that come up to me and say, gee, Dom, as a performer, you're able to go out there and perform and you're very relaxed. And as a speaker, you walk out in front of a large audience and just start speaking and you're totally very relaxed. You have no fear, no stage fright. You know, do you plan out what you're going to say? And I say, you know, I do not. I walk out and start talking to the audience and then decide there where I'm going to go. And I get a kick out of the fact that the idea of stage fright, how I teach my students to get over that is to realize that you have been blessed with a talent, a gift of playing music and specifically drums. And now it is your responsibility to share that gift and nurture that gift. You got to keep learning it and keep getting better at it, and you got to give it away. You got to share it.
Sure.
So the gift is much bigger than your stage fright. It's not about you and if you're nervous. The cause is you now have a responsibility to go up there and perform and share this gift so someone in that audience hears it and feels it and is moved by that. So it's no longer about you. So take it away from the stage fright. It's not about you. I don't really care about how you feel. What I care about is, are you being honest to the gift that was given to you? And are you seizing the moment? And are you owning now? And are you sharing that? So because it's about the other person, and can you move someone to a higher level because of the gift you have? That is what it's really all about. So forget the stage fright. Go out there and do what you need to do, what a greater power has given you in this gift, and do it. And do it and go out there and make a difference. No matter what you do, make that difference. The world needs it now more than ever.
True. Yeah.
It needs everyone to take their responsibility and share their talent.
Yeah, very true.
You've had an amazing career that's spanned many, many years. Have you fulfilled all your ambitions, or there's still many left to fulfill?
Well, great question. There are still things that I'm looking to achieve.
Okay.
You know, I want to be able to put a recording out of my own. I want to be able to. I'm working on my second book, Owning Now. Mm-hmm. I want to be able to have that happening, and I'm working on another book called The Business and Art of Art.
Okay.
The business side and the artistic side of art, where I talk about both of those sides to assist musicians in achieving higher levels of business success with their art. So between recording, between writing more books, motivational books, drum books, between going to certain countries that I haven't been to yet. There are still adventures that I am looking forward to every day that I can achieve the chance to hopefully fulfill, the extra things I want to do. I am totally satisfied with all that I've done. I've enjoyed my achievements tremendously. And even though I've enjoyed my achievements, I still see the potential that I still could be doing. So at 60 years young, I hopefully can still be given the chance to achieve some of these goals.
Cool. Great. Cool.
Crazy. We've done it, guys. You guys have done great here, man. You guys have done a great interview.
We got a few more questions, if that's all right. It's under the premise that you have a rare day off. If we could ask just a couple of those, or do you have to go at all? Or?
Absolutely.
Well, yeah, exactly that. Under the premise that you have a rare day off, what 2 activities would you do during that day?
Boy, I have, for me to relax, I stay relaxed every day. So I don't need a day to relax.
Right.
I'm already relaxed.
Okay.
Even when I'm flying to countries and doing what I love doing, I'm already relaxed. So I don't need a day to relax. But on a day off, it's a very simple routine. I would spend that with my family at any level.
Cool. Right.
Spending time with my wife and my boys, whether it's doing some chores around the house, whether it's going for a ride, whether it's going to a movie, some of the new movies that are out. I like to take my boys to the movies and see some of these new movies. I get a chance to, I always say my boys gave me life. I was reborn when I was blessed with my boys.
Very true.
Because, here I am at 60 going to a Star Trek movie or going to an Iron Man 3 movie and getting such a kick out of it. And not only do I get a kick out of the movie, but I get a kick out of watching my boys get a kick out of the movie.
Oh, cool.
So to me, the excitement of spending time with my family, my wonderful wife, who has been my partner through all different trials and tribulations that we've experienced in our life, and the good and bad times of losing my mom a couple of years ago and being able to experience the love of my family at such a high level that it is the love of my family and the feelings that I get when I'm with them that motivate me to want to be the best person I can be, to push myself as far as I can push myself, and to try to secure my boys in a life that will give them happiness. Doesn't matter what they want to do, just happiness. So spending time with my family is the ultimate journey. And if I'm alone or by myself, it simply would be reading.
All right.
I'm an avid reader. I read all different types of books. I mostly love biographies and or autobiographies. I like reading about the lives of people.
Yep.
I like reading about history. And so between that I'm constantly reading. On my iPad, I've got my Kindle app and my iBooks, and I've got hundreds of books in there. So when I'm traveling around the world, I can carry all these different books with me, and whatever mood I'm in, I go into it, and there it is.
Cool, great.
So it's good stuff. So that to me is an important part of it. And the more I read, the more I learn, the more I'm inspired, and the more that continues to be the go. And the more I'm with my family, the more I see my purpose of life, and that keeps me going. So those are my days off.
Cool. Great. Well, who from any time in history do you invite over for dinner on your day off?
Boy, Chris, great question.
Thanks.
It's if I think back of people that really made a difference in the world scene, those are the people that I think. I mean, my gosh, to sit down with Albert Einstein and to tap into not so much understanding his theory of relativity, but how did he get to think the way he thought? Mm-hmm. I've read many books about him, and a journalist once asked him a question, Mr. Einstein, you have opened up your mind to a certain level that has opened the doors to many great things that have been created and invented. And they said, how did you open your mind that way? What is it? How did you get to that stage? And he answered the question by saying, you cannot solve new challenges with old solutions.
Okay.
You cannot solve new challenges with old solutions. You need to come up with new solutions to face the new challenges that are there. So that's, when I read that inspired me to even change my drumming. I played traditional grip for 37 years, and I played cross-handed playing. When I read that quote on an airplane, I immediately changed my drumming to all match grip and open-handed playing. Right. The next gig I got to, which was in Germany, I just changed my drum set around and started playing that way because I was playing traditional grip, which was an old solution to an old challenge.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
The drum was on the side. They couldn't play match grip. They played traditional grip. So when I saw that, I said, well, I'm playing drum set. The snare is in front of me, and I'm sitting down. I need to have a new solution to the new challenges.
Yeah.
So, and Albert Einstein, I think, in a conversation would open up the doors of my mind more. To sit down with Gandhi, a man that was able to make great change and move millions of people to historical heights of unifying his people and doing what he did with nonviolence. I mean, the ultimate man would be to sit down in the presence of Jesus Christ. Sure. Whether you believed or not, if he was the savior of the world, what you got to give him credit is this guy's got a reputation of over 2,000 years that has been pretty strong and positive.
Yep.
So whether you believe it as a savior or not is almost unimportant. What's important is that this guy has influenced people from his life of 33 years. This guy's made change in people and continues to. Boy, imagine just spending a few moments of time. Plato, Aristotle, Socrates, what these men envisioned thousands of years ago, and the opening up of your mind, the freedom of thinking, were doors of opportunity. And Abraham Lincoln, that in the trials and times of just American history, this man was able to save the Union and free slaves that changed and impacted the world from their positions. I think that's something which would be a handful of people. I mean, Leonardo da Vinci, my God, can you imagine, or Michelangelo, having this chance to sit down with them and even if they don't speak with them, just witness them working on one of their marvels.
Sure.
What that would be to watch Michelangelo, carving out of stone and Da Vinci putting a brush mark on the Mona Lisa, that is the most famous work of art in the history of time. That's powerful to be able. So I think these people, to me, would be people of greatness. Charlie Chaplin. God, I wish I could have had a chance to sit down with Chaplin.
Cool. Yeah.
And just ask him about his way of thinking. I mean, this is a guy that wrote the screenplay, directed the movie, starred in it, and then wrote the score and conducted the band to all of what he did. This guy did it all.
Yeah.
Who in modern day times is at all close to that? Sure. Even Spielberg, as great and as brilliant who I think Spielberg is, he's not composing the music and acting in the movies. Now, Spielberg happens to be also one of the guys on the list, and I did have a chance in my lifetime to meet him.
All right.
Cool. For a period of time, about 15 years ago, I was called by his office, and I was asked to teach his son, Max.
Right.
I drove to Steven Spielberg's summer home here on Long Island and was able to teach Max and have a chance to have a couple times and little moments of conversation with Steven Spielberg, which was just, brilliant.
Fantastic.
Brilliant. So there are some great people in the course of history that I think if any of us had the chance to even spend a moment of time with them, what questions would you ask? Would you be in awe of the person and act like a dumbfounded fan? Or would you use your brilliance, your own personal brilliance, to try to tap into the right question to reap the wisdom that person can share with you in just a short moment of time?
Too right. Probably the first one for me, I think.
One of my students said, if I ever met Spielberg, I'd be too busy stammering for the first 20 minutes.
Yeah, that'd be true. That'd be true. So when all your guests have gone home, what TV box set or movie do you watch in the evening?
Boy, that's great. I'm probably because I don't watch much TV at all, and I rarely watch TV.
Right.
If I ever do watch TV, I'm usually trying to catch up on the news.
Okay.
So I'll go through and I'll watch my two favorite news stations are Sky News, BBC News, and CNN.
All right.
And I get two great perspectives from there because I get to see CNN, which has a certain international flair, but through the eyes of America.
Yep.
And I get to see BBC Sky News, which is, again, international news, but through the eyes of the Brits.
Yep.
So I get a chance to kind of see a different perspective of how the world is perceived. And I steal ideas and see great interviews and get a kick out of, just the update of where our world is at. Here I am traveling the world. I feel I should at least understand what's going on.
Yeah.
For sure.
But that's pretty much, when it comes to television. My children always have, a lot of the fun new shows on. And every once in a while I'll sit down and watch one of their shows. And the challenge I have with it is as I'm watching it, I'm too busy asking them to say, what does that mean? I don't get who's that guy? So I end up ruining it for them. So I learned that if I watch one of their shows with them, I have to keep quiet and not understand anything. And then after the show's over, I ask them about it. And then when I ask them about it, I laugh. It's fun. But it's this, it's a real delayed action. So I have to try and get up on what's happening through their eyes. So they're the ones that share me the upkeep of what's happening in the modern day pop world.
Cool. Well, Dom, that's the end of our time. But thank you so much for taking some time out to talk to us. And that was absolutely brilliant. Thanks a lot.
Amazing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Man. Thank you so much for your desire and your want to do this here. It worked out well that I had a couple of breaks in my lessons. This works out time because now in the next 10 minutes, my next student comes in. So the timing for this worked out absolutely perfect.
Great.
Student coming in for a couple of hours for a lesson, and we'll crank it up and adventure more into their personal needs of what they're doing. And as I said before, the adventure continues. So I thank you so much for your time, gentlemen, and good luck to you both.
Lovely. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Onward and upward, for sure.
Always. Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So there we go. That was our interview with Dom Famularo. What can you say? We had a blast. It was awesome, wasn't it?
Oh, the man was so positive and just a huge, huge inspiration. It was great.
So there you go. Go to Dom's website at domfamularo.com. Check out all his books. And if you can get a lesson in, I thoroughly recommend it. So please go to his website, check it all out. And thank you very much to Dom for talking to us today. So Dom, at the beginning of the interview, well, just before the interview, he was telling us a story about John Bonham and his technique, and also about Jim Marshall. So what we did is we recorded it and we've put it at the end of this podcast. So keep listening for a few minutes and you'll hear that. But thanks a lot for checking out episode number 2. And episode number 3 will be out in a couple of weeks' time. So check that out too. So until then, play some drums, have fun, and see you later.
That guys have said, and when I speak to someone like Carmine Appice, who, Carmine Appice, I've known Carmine for 40 years. Actually, this show that Brian Tichy is putting on, Carmine's going to be the MC of the show.
Okay. All right.
And at the time, Vanilla Fudge, which was a huge rock band back in the 60s, their opening act here in the States was Zeppelin.
Right.
So that's where Carmine had met John. Mm-hmm. And when he had first met John, they opened up. John had like a little 20-inch bass drum and a little, 12-inch tom-tom and a 14-inch floor tom. And Bonham was actually a jazz drummer.
Yeah.
And when he played with the band, the sound was too small. So Carmine was the one that said, listen, John, you got to get a bigger sound. You got to get bigger drums.
Right.
And John was like, well, what do you mean? He goes, listen, I'm with Ludwig and Peisty. Let me call up and get you a set and have something that's going to really give you a sound to where music is nowadays, which was a big sound. So, Carmine goes and orders a kit and gets like a 26 or 28-inch bass drum, whatever the first one was, My gosh, that size of a bass drum, you could sleep a family of 6 here. in the streets here. My gosh, to play a drum that big. Well, they did it. They got the drums and the cymbals. John started playing. Because John, as a jazz player, he had an incredible feel and a looseness and a fluidity and a very good understanding of technique that he was able to adapt to that kit. Then, of course, he started applying many of the jazz patterns that we knew, like a lot of those double bass drum, single pedal, double hits on the bass drum patterns were jazz patterns. He then added to a bigger bass drum sound and put the strength and the power behind it, each hit. And, of course, his sound evolved. Yeah. And Jim Marshall, the very famous amplifier inventor, who just passed away last year, was a dear friend of mine. Jim Marshall, and a lot of guys don't realize this, was an excellent drummer.
Right. Okay.
Jim Marshall was a drummer. And as the story goes, Jim Marshall, who I was performing in the States, and Jim Marshall would come to a lot of my concerts. And he eventually, liked my playing, and we began to hang out. And whenever Jim Marshall would be in the audience, I always called him up to play a song.
Right. Cool.
So here's the famous Jim Marshall, the inventor of this amplification system that has changed the face of rock and roll music. And he comes up, and he'd play a shuffle on the drums, and the place would go crazy.
Right.
So I had dinner many, many times with Jim, and I said, Jim, tell me about drumming years ago. He says, well, I was a drummer playing with several bands, just a local drummer. And he said, I was playing with an acoustic, it was a hollow guitar that had a pickup on it, and it went to an amplifier. Right. And the guitar player was playing, and the amplifier they heard a popping sound, and a couple of the tubes had blown. Mm-hmm. And the sound that was coming out of the amplifier was a weird sound, and the guitar player, as a jazz acoustic guitar player, hated the sound. So he went in his car and got another amplifier and was going to throw this amplifier out.
Right.
And Jim said, gee, can I have that amplifier? He said, yeah, take it. It's a piece of junk. Jim took it and had an electrical friend of his analyze what was the sound, what was making that sound. And what it was years ago, the amplifiers were tube amplifiers.
Okay. Right.
So the low amplifier, the low tube amplifier busted, and the tube for the highs busted, and all that was working was the tube that created the mid sound.
Right.
And Jim liked that sound. So Jim asked his friend, can you duplicate this sound? They did, and then he came up with the name Marshall, and they started to put this amplifier out. And as history goes, one of their first endorsees was Jimi Hendrix.
What an endorsee, huh?
All right, so now his business takes off. Hendrix is playing, the craziness of Hendrix going out there. Then every other guitar player wanted a Marshall amp.
Right.
And Jim Marshall eventually put the drums aside and focused on his business.
Yeah, which he would.
Yeah. All right, now I asked Jim, I said, Jim, what else were you doing? He said, well, I was also a teacher. I said, Jim, really? I said, well, who did you teach back in those days? He said, well, I had my three most famous students were John Bonham, Keith Moon, and Mitch Mitchell. Now, let me tell you something. It doesn't get any deeper than that.
Yeah.
When it comes to having a teacher talk about students.
Right.
Now, what's amazing, I asked Jim, I said, well, gee, what books did you take these guys through? He said, well, the two most important books that I took them through was Stick Control and Jim Chapin's Advanced Techniques for the Modern Drummer, which is a jazz independence book.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And he said John flew through that book. They had great independence. And, of course, they'd get good drum set independence from the Jim Chapin book. Mm-hmm. And then from the Stick Control book, good, real hand, technique.
Yep. Right.
So between having strong hands and then strong independence and being into jazz, that opened up a whole other world that when Bonham applied those concepts to rock, that's the Bonham sound.
Right.
So it's a brilliant, finding these little nuggets of history. And Jim Marshall was just an extremely dear man, and we lost a great soul with Jim Marshall.
Oh, for sure, definitely.
That's a great story.
What a story!
So that's what I say. So when I tell my students, and they'll come by and they'll say, Dom, you know what? Like my favorite drummer is John Bonham, and I want to learn a lot of the Bonham stuff. I said, good. Let's open up Stick Control and Jim Chapin's Advanced Technique for the Bonham drum. And they say, no, I just want to work on Bonham grooves, and I want to get his sound and feel. I said, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Yeah. You got to get your hands together, and then they got to learn the independence that John did, and then we'll open you up to the drum set. and you'll have a better understanding of what John is doing. You'll be able to hear his playing and analyze it better.
Yeah, that's cool.
So I had to tell them this story, get them to understand the game. They start getting into it, and here I am in the 21st century teaching the concept that Jim Marshall shared with me, that he, of course, shared with his great students.
Yeah. That hasn't changed over time because it doesn't need to.
It hasn't. And when you think of books like Stick Control or Jim Chapin's book, I think what's amazing about these books is they wrote books that they really are timeless. No matter how drumming has changed. I mean, Stick Control came out in 1935. That's 78 years ago. Yeah. And it's still the number one selling hand technique book, which I also use with my students for their feet.
Yep.
So to me, it's the number one selling double bass book.
Yeah.
And with Jim Chapin's book, that was written in 1948. When that book came out, that changed the way we perceive the paradigm of drum set playing. That you can now play ostinato patterns and move it around to play accents while you're playing a jazz ride rhythm. Well, it doesn't matter whether you're playing a jazz ride rhythm or whether you're playing a rock rhythm. It's the ability of being able to accent and punctuate within the drum set with your different appendages and different limbs. So that book opened up in 1948. So that's the number one selling drum set book.
Yep.
So what these guys wrote are documents not much unlike the American Constitution.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That it is a document that 230 years ago, these brilliant men wrote this Constitution that we still guide our government and the focus of America today from these words that were put together that guide us and direct us in the concepts of this vision years ago, which still pertains to today's 21st century.
Yeah.
So I think what these guys did was they wrote a document that literally in the drumming community is very much like a drumming constitution. If you want to understand this instrument to any level, you have to go through at least those two books to widen your ideas of approaching and being able to express what you feel to let them freely come out.
Sure.